I'm the bad guy?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Yapping on all the time. You're lucky you're not next to him. What do you mean? You snore. Oh, I don't. Anyway, you've got bad breath.
It's Inappropriate Characters. The Spice Girls were popular. Okay, people aren't hearing things, so wait a sec. Wait a sec. They're only hearing me at the moment. So why would that be? Yeah. Right, hang on. Yeah. Okay. Can you guys say something now? Yeah. Still can't hear him. Okay, what about now?
Testing.
No.
Okay, I can see their bars moving now.
Okay.
So can you hear him?
Can you hear us, guys?
No. That's fucked up.
Well, there's a lag, so give him a sec.
That's true. Come on, lag.
Anything, guys? Can you hear us?
Okay,
Oh.
yay.
Someone
say win.
Rewind.
Okay, so you can hear us now? Okay. So I'm not gonna do that whole bit again. I'm just gonna make this point, right? There are two incompatible statements. One is the BBC is a valued national treasure that people will gladly pay £155 to every year in a tax to support. And the other one is if that tax becomes voluntary, then the BBC will go bankrupt, right? You can believe one of those two things, but not both. And as it happens, the Telegraph answered which of the two is the factual statement, I think, at least the one that is definitely not factual, which is that they did a poll about how many people wanted this forced £155 tax to become voluntary. 3/4 of the British population want it to become voluntary, right? So the vast majority of the British people don't want to be forced to pay a tax on the BBC, which is why I'm very pleased that apparently it looks like as of tomorrow they're going to be announcing the defunding of the BBC, and it'll switch to a subscription package.
Yeah. And if you think me and Pundit agree on everything, we've been going at each other about this and related topics all day. So
if you go on either of our Twitters, you'll see it was just brutal. We were just fighting each other. I've wasted my entire day fighting with this guy about it. We can maybe talk more about this after Benjer has to go to bed.
Yes.
But for now, let's get back to the topic.
I'm already in the doghouse, so I probably can't go over an hour tonight.
Okay. So to recap then, we were going to cover the Robert Bledslaw II stuff about Judges Guild, the Romance of the Perilous Land versus Varg, and Evil Hat kind of doubling down on things.
That's right. So let's start with the whole issue of Bob Bledsaw II and Judges Guild. For those of you who don't know, though I think almost everyone does know that watches us, probably, Judges Guild was one of the great early RPG companies. They made some of the first products that were related to Dungeons and Dragons at the very origin. We're talking about the 70s here, right?
Yeah, and 76.
Their founder was a guy named Bob Bledsaw. They're most famous, I think, for the Majestic Wilderlands and the City-State of the Invincible Overlord, which are both classic. Like one is the classic city setting and the other one is a classic campaign world. They kind of fell out of influence in the 80s. They didn't really adapt too much. And now eventually Bob Bledsaw Sr. passed away and the company was taken over by a guy named Bob Bledsaw II, who really just was working on licensing out Judges Guild products to different people like Rob Conley, Goodman Games, Frog God, all kinds of OSR companies that were interested in doing stuff, either working directly with the Judges Guild products or using the Wilderland setting or things like that. All right. So that was the basic setup. And now Eric Tenkar, who is definitely not what anyone would call a rampaging left-wing lunatic or something like that, right? Eric Tenkar is definitely more towards the side of the deplorables, I think, than if he, he's not really at the same level of me, but he's a guy that a lot of the SJWs don't even like.
He makes a virtue of his neutrality. I'm not sure what it is that turns a man neutral, but
yeah, by feigning neutrality, he ends up getting generally sided with the deplorable OSR. But Tenkar came out with a blog entry where he showed a couple of social media images of really shocking stuff that Bob Bledsaw II, the son of Bob Bledsaw, had been posting. Very, very questionable things about African Americans and extremely questionable things about Jewish people. And after that, at first some people were defending him. They were saying, well, maybe this is just some joke, some isolated thing. Next, Rob Conley, who works with Judges Guild, he's for years been the Majestic Wilderlands guy of the OSR, did a blog entry announcing that he's no longer working with Judges Guild and linking to several more posts of exactly the same kind of stuff, right? And on the RPG site, there was a discussion thread about it. You can check it out on the rpgsite.com. About Bob Bledsaw, and a lot of people have since posted a tremendous amount of social media postings that very clearly show that Bob Bledsaw is a rampaging anti-Semite, and pretty much, it would be hard not to call him a white supremacist in the literal sense, right? The problem is we've been hearing that about other people for such a very long time now, right? That the SJW left has a tendency to accuse anyone they don't like. If you aren't planning to vote for Bernie Sanders, you must be a racist, sexist, homophobe, misogynist, et cetera, right?
Yeah. They finally found a wolf.
yeah, exactly. They've been crying wolf for so long that there are some people on the inglorious OSR side of things that are looking at this and say, well, it's probably not so bad, or something like that. because the instinct is always when the SJWs condemn someone, now you're going to start by assuming that they're not guilty, right? And the thing is, though, this guy really, like, he is really extremely racist in not the SJW sense, but in the very real sense of what that word used to mean before it was diluted into uselessness by the SJW crowd. That's part of the horrible things the SJWs have done, is that it makes it really hard now to be able, you have to really go into this deep dive of evidence to judge whether someone the SJWs say is a racist really is or isn't, right? So this is the thing. And now Judges Guild is, Rob Conley has already said he's not working with them anymore. Frog God Games said they're not working with them anymore. And on DriveThruRPG, they've taken down. I don't think DriveThru made an announcement. Maybe my co-host can correct me if I'm wrong. But the Judges Guild stuff has been taken down. I don't know if that was by DriveThru or by Judges Guild.
I didn't see any announcement, but there was a confirmation from DriveThru, I think, on Twitter or Facebook. But yeah, it's all gone.
However, they haven't removed stuff that was written by other publishers that happens to use Judges Guild stuff. So, for example, Rob Conley's products are all still available on DriveThruRPG. Anyway, the majority of the OSR, almost everybody that is aligned with the OSR, is in agreement in condemning this guy. Now, as it happens, I think that there's not quite a consensus among the three of us about to what degree DriveThru should be, removing his stuff or just what that condemnation should mean. But if either of my co-hosts right now want to say that Bledsoe did nothing wrong or something like that, I guess this is the moment. And if not, if you guys want to take over now and tell me what you think about Bledsoe's comments and what should or should not be done about them, you guys can go first.
Justice for Bledsoe.
Seriously?
No. No. I'm not gonna white knight for him or whatever the phrase is. But hang
on. That would be a very appropriate phrase, right? Because besides saying that the Holocaust was a hoax and talking about, black people as slaves and things like that, one of the posts has now shown that this guy literally endorsed a fringe candidate in wherever he is, Texas or somewhere, I don't know where he is, whose campaign slogan was "Make America White Again." Okay, so if there's any doubt that this dude is a white supremacist, that's literally the smoking gun,
Yeah. So White Knight or White Grand Dragon for him, I suppose. They're both inappropriate.
Do you want to go first, Jim?
Sure. Okay. Reprehensible comments. And this creates a perplexing issue for anyone like me who is keen on free speech and is concerned about monopolies and concerned about the erosion of having a personal life separate to your career, right? So I think it's condemnation worthy. I wouldn't personally want to do business with him anymore if I were on the basis of these opinions. But I still find it concerning that a lot of the people that work with him or have worked with him are being caught in the kind of carpet bombing of everything that he's ever done or been involved in. So it impacts more people than just him. And so far as I'm aware, he didn't make any of these posts or comments in a professional capacity on any RPG forums, on DriveThru, in any of his products, anything like that. So I think he's a horrible bigot. I wouldn't want anything to do with him anymore. But at the same time, I feel that people are entitled to be horrible bigots, entitled to express horribly bigoted opinions, and I think it's better that we know about it than not. But I'm still concerned that this wasn't said or done professionally, and for DriveThru, which is a de facto monopoly in this space, to just rip away all of that content, all of that income, all of those people's work in one go, it doesn't sit right. However much I think he's hateful and racist and bigoted and all the rest of it, somehow it doesn't sit right for me.
I'm not going to comment on most of what you said yet. I'm going to let Venger say his deal first. But I wanted to add one more detail, which I think is important to mention to anybody listening, which is that people who knew Bob Bledsaw Sr. have said pretty much with unanimity that they had never in their life heard Bob Bledsaw, the senior, who is now deceased, saying anything racist or anti-Semitic in his life. Right. So this is worse than above everything else. This piece of shit went and destroyed his father's legacy.
Yeah.
When very likely his father did not share his views.
Though I did see someone comment that Senior had put out a Civil War game, and they were using that as a as a way to say maybe that's where he got it from. But I think that's absurd.
That's SJW nonsense right there.
Yeah.
Venger, what do you think?
I personally blame the Dukes of Hazzard TV show. No, my thoughts mirror Jim's quite a bit. I also, in Trump's words, condemn this guy and his beliefs totally. But on the other hand, I don't think that he should be ruined or canceled from the industry or from online life just for holding either stupid or reprehensible beliefs. There's a lot of crazy people out there and a lot of people that believe in conspiracy theories, and whether that's because they're somewhere on the spectrum of mental illness or because they've just had fucked up experiences in life, or I don't know, something happened to their brain, maybe. But to take away, everything that they have, professionally speaking, the ability to provide for themselves and their families, to interact with people online to some degree. I mean, like, what's next? Like, is Twitter and Facebook going to ban this guy too? Or is that, is that the sort of thing that would happen 4 or 5 years from now? I wouldn't want that. And then you have to, so let's say that, this guy is probably a white supremacist. What if the shoe's on the other foot? Like, what if there's like a black supremacist? Or what if there's a Jewish supremacist? Would that be a Zionist? I don't know. Or someone that thinks that gay people are better than straight people, a homo supremacist. Are we going to take everything away from those people because they think that they or people like them are better than everybody else? And then, where does it go from there? Like, what kind of politics is too far or forbidden that you can't go? I mean, sure, maybe a legit Nazi National Socialist, maybe that's too far, or maybe those people should be like, removed from society or online life or locked in cages, as a lot of people think. But what if you're just a nationalist, or what if you're just a socialist, or what if you're a communist? Maybe how far do you go? Like, if society goes in a certain direction, then there are going to be certain things, certain people, certain ideas that are too far from the norm. And people will want to persecute those people and those beliefs. But I don't know. You got to draw the line somewhere. And I don't know if this is part of the slippery slope or if this is totally justified. I'm all for people individually condemning him or not buying his products or not wanting to do business with him or associate with him. It's a free country. But for drive-through or anyone else to unilaterally take down his products, ban him from conventions, or ban him from certain platforms on social media, deplatform, demonetize, cancel. I don't know. I don't think that's right for anybody who just uses their First Amendment rights. If this guy took violence into his own hands and he went to, a synagogue or a black church or really any place and committed, unspeakable violence, terrorism, things like that, then, yeah, not only should he be locked up, but I'm all for taking everything away from him, limiting it or denying his access to online stuff and, taking down his books. But if you're just talking about it, I don't know. I think that's too far. And I don't know where it's going to end. It depends on where politics go in 5 years from now. Yeah.
I've got
Okay.
one last point
Go ahead.
to make. I think I would be less uneasy if the lesson that had been learned from this was there are genuinely bad people out there. We should be more careful about throwing these accusations around. But the lesson that seems to have been learned is, haha, we were right. Everyone we accuse of being a Nazi is therefore a Nazi, which is the wrong lesson to learn. So I think my unease would be salved if they'd learned the right lesson from it.
That's a very interesting statement because actually, from what I've seen, the opposite might be true in this case.
I hope so.
For starters, I get that the two of you are kind of arguing the slippery slope argument. And certainly that's been a big problem when it comes to the SJW push to cancel culture. But this is only because the SJW started trying to slide and dilute the definition of things like racism and sexism and that to extend to basically mainstream views and certainly conservative views that are not in fact racist or sexist in any way, that are basically modernist, liberal, democratic views, right? That are the views of Enlightenment civilization. And they've said, no, but that's racist, right? And so this is how that slope happens. There once was a time, I mean, I'm old enough to remember, I think both of you are probably old enough to remember too, when there was a very clear delineation of who would be called a Nazi, right? That it wasn't, that was a word that was used for people who posted stuff like Bledsoe did, right? Or people who acted the way Varg Kearns does, right? And that these people were seen by everyone as reprehensible. And that, there was that line was very rarely blurry, right? David Duke was a grand wizard of the KKK. Yeah, he was one of the baddies, right? And if you had someone like, I don't know, William F. Buckley, right, you could say, well, he's a goddamn conservative and I hate him. But you wouldn't have said, no, he's a Nazi, right? But that is what has been diluted in our society. And I think that the result that we've seen with the Bledsoe situation, like some people in the comments, Dave Pettit, I think, commented, well, the problem is that now everybody's that worked with him is guilty by association. But I haven't really seen that happen. I haven't seen among the OSR, I haven't seen anyone attacking Rob Conley or attacking Frog God Games or attacking Goodman Games for this, right? Except a very few couple of comments from some of the most extreme SJWs, and no one seemed to listen to them, right? If this had happened a couple of years ago, what you might have seen is everybody retweeting this and throwing in, yeah, we should ban Bob Bledsoe and Grim Jim, right? Just because right? That they're exactly the same when they're not, right?
I think a lot of people really came out almost straight away and condemned him and said we're not going to work with him. You know, there wasn't any ambiguity there. As soon as it became obvious that this was true, everyone was like, "Fuck that guy."
And it's because this is an obvious case, and I think that in a way that serves us because it makes everything else that the SJWs have done, right, when they've been, persecuting Venger for putting a picture with some big-titted woman in one of his books, right, or when they've been persecuting Grim Jim because of some of his some of what he wrote in an RPG, right? Or when they're going after me because I say mean things on the internet, right? And you compare those to what this guy posted, and you can say, no, hang on. What these guys are doing is nothing like what that guy did, right? And so putting a firm line there is saying, yeah, that's what we all condemn. The other stuff is ideological nonsense that these people are arguing about, right? And so I saw hardly any SJWs trying to do what they've done in many other cases, right? Because anytime, like for example, when Zach Smith misbehaved, they tried to throw me in there with him, right? As if I had been someone who had serially abused my girlfriend or something, when in fact he was the one who had done that. And all I'd done is say mean things on the internet, right? And they've done that sort of thing many, many times. But here they didn't do it because I think even they saw that would not come off looking good for them, right? That it would look so opportunistic and it was so different from the type of nonsensical accusations they usually made, that what this guy actually did was so much worse, right? So as far as I'm concerned, I think, if you said, Venger, that you wouldn't want to collaborate with him, right? And I know that I certainly wouldn't want to collaborate with Bledsaw. And Rob Conley doesn't want to collaborate with him anymore. And I mean, Rob Conley's a guy whose entire OSR career has been the Wilderlands, and he's done really good work with it. This is, to me, I think this is a case where you can't really say, well, but Mr. Wieck should have to still host his stuff, right? Like, does Drive-Thru-RPG have an obligation to post the Rahowa RPG for sale, right? Which is a super racist RPG that some Klansman wrote once, right? Or, stuff that Varg Vikernes did. I mean, the one big difference between Varg Vikernes and Bob Bledsaw II is that as far as we know, Bob Bledsaw hasn't murdered a man, right? But that's the only really significant difference between the two of them.
And Varg's racial attitudes are present in his material.
Yeah, well, okay, that's another difference, yes, that the material itself is racist. You've got a good point there. I'll grant you that one. So my perspective is actually that I don't think that I think that the way to approach this is not to wave the free speech banner in this case, because in this case there's a justifiable bad behavior here that we can take and say, look, this is the hallmark. This is somebody who really did something terrible. Right. And as for what you were saying, Venger, I think that if you saw some game designer if some well-known left-oriented game designer made a bunch of social media posts calling for, kill all white people or something like that, which is possible. I haven't seen somebody quite do that. Right. But if somebody did that, right, or even more possible, given that there's much more anti-Semitism on the left these days than on the right, if somebody went and, tweeted something that was extremely anti-Semitic on the left, they should get the same treatment because that sort of behavior is disgusting and reprehensible, right? So that'd be a real test, actually. Now, I don't go around looking for, SJW social media posts, but if someone were to expose that some prominent person in the, SJW wing of tabletop RPGs had posted a bunch of equally grotesquely anti-Semitic comments as what Bledsaw did, Ilhan Omar-esque sort of stuff, right? I think the response should be the same.
I think Swordsfall has come close, the closest that I've seen on the other side to supremacist viewpoints and overt hatred and organized harassment campaigns and so on, and he hasn't really been punished for it. Yeah,
but I'm going to be fair to Swordsfall and say I don't think it's quite been to
no.
the same extent
No, I just
as
think
what I saw from Bledsoe's posts.
that's the closest I think I've seen anywhere, but I'm probably just not seeing it because they all have me blocked. Hey.
Okay, so Pundit, you mentioned drive-through RPG, and I don't think that they should be forced to or obligated to carry any product that they themselves find offensive or people that they, I don't know, find reprehensible or that have beliefs they condemn. But I would hate for them to be like on the edge of their seats, just waiting for some edge case to come along to make a point or a stand and take it off just because there's a small handful of very vocal people, maybe social justice warriors, maybe far right people. Or alt right people even.
I
They
think
complain.
I think me and you, Venger, have both been censored or have had to change products.
Yeah,
whereas I don't think you have. Have you, Pundit?
No, I haven't. But it's because you guys. I think in both cases you had some highly controversial or salacious content that my books usually don't have. But actually, that's the thing, right? There have been edge cases with drive-through RPG that sometimes drive-through has chosen censorship unfairly, and other times they backed down and didn't censor when there was a lot of demand for them to do it, right? So they're right on the border between those things. And I think that
finish up.
The argument here is that they were very wrong to censor certain products that they have censored, and that in the future, you can point to what Bledsoe did and say, look, this is nothing like what Venture Satanis put in one of his games, right? It's nothing like that, right? So how can you justify this, right? And that'll be an argument that can be made in opposition to censorship that is born out of ideological motivation or SJW hysteria.
Yeah, I just want to reply to a comment here.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, drive-through doesn't sell anything that has Zach Smith's name on it anymore. There may be a couple of much older products that he did in collaboration that might be on there, but as far as I'm aware, they removed them. Zach's also only been accused. He hasn't been convicted of anything anywhere, which is another fly in the ointment. And earlier, someone did point out that Varg has, he's been to prison, he's paid his debt to society, and I do think that mixes things up a bit as well. But he's still a dick now, so it doesn't make that much difference.
Yeah, as far as I know, they don't sell anything by Zach Smith, and there was actually some controversy about that where they continued to kind of harass James Raggi under the suspicion that Zach might be secretly writing for him or something like that, which is, again, another case you can point and say, well, this is stupid, right? Even,
Well, he came out with that book. Zach has nothing to do with this book.
Yeah.
That product. Yeah. And I think that did a number of stupid things. It put Raggi back in the crosshairs of a number of people, and it just added suspicion. And then it made him seem like a waffler and wishy-washy because, he kind of kicked Zach to the curb, but now he regrets it and wishes he hadn't done it because he caved to, I don't know, public opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still haven't heard an apology for his distancing himself or his. I don't know if he actually condemned him, but he backed far enough away from Jordan Peterson so that everybody knew that Jordan Peterson is bad news. This Canadian psychology professor is too far into the danger zone for polite society.
Yeah, which is kind of nonsense, right?
Right.
Yeah. Shall we move on to Varg then?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Since we brought him up,
Yeah.
you want to introduce this one, Grim?
I guess I'm the best one to do it. So there's this game called Romance of the Perilous Land by Scott Malthouse, who's generally speaking an alright dude. It's based around Arthurian mythology and British myths and legends and so on. But it has a remarkably current season Doctor Who-esque illustration set. It's got a sort of medieval Britain as being wildly multicultural and so on. This attracted Varg's ire, and he presented it in the sort of way that this was an erasure of the British mythology and so on, and this was a sort of revisionist history or something. I think there are legitimate criticisms. I wouldn't say complaints. I wouldn't say hatred is justified in this case. From what little I've been able to see, it's fairly respectful to the mythology and everything. It's just this one aspect that's off. But Varg pointed it out and unleashed a whole bunch of racist people on this product. Made a variety of horrible statements on Twitter, which are consistent with this history. And this, of course, backfired horribly because now loads of people are going to be buying this product to stick it to Varg. So, counterproductive from his point of view. And it did show that he still holds a lot of these deeply retrograde views, and it's also completely poisoned the well for anyone who might want to make any of those legitimate criticisms about British history and all the rest of it. It's just there's no doing it now.
Right. So I'll comment first of all by saying that if you guys follow me on Twitter, you might have seen that I've gotten into some pretty serious Twitter fights with Varg and with Varg's followers, almost as much as I fight with the SJWs. And that's what happens whenever you mention Varg. You get a whole bunch of these ethno-nationalists that come on and try to bombard you, right? So I'm sure that's what happened to the guy that made Perilous Land. I don't know anything about the Romance of Perilous Land game apart from what its description is in the on its website or whatever, because I haven't read the book or anything like that. I noticed just now that someone in our comments said it's a nice game. David Thompson said that. So at least one person watching us seems to have read the game and thinks it's all right. What I do know for sure is that Varg is a piece of shit, right? And that his game, if Varg is criticizing Perilous Land for its inaccuracy, that's really funny coming from a guy who made this completely pseudo-nonsensical game based on Aryanist Thule power fantasies where you play heroic Aryans fighting what are basically Arabs, Jews, and black people. So if you're a stickler for historical accuracy, maybe you get to criticize Romance of Perilous Land, but not if you're Varg Vikernes, And as far as the book itself, I mean, okay, yeah, I've seen the cover. There's a black guy on the cover. All right. And everything I've read about the game seems to indicate that it's very clearly a game that has made all the necessary kowtowing to the 2019 Seattle morality cult, right? It makes a point of saying, yeah, this is based on British folklore and legend, but it's got totally, modern West Coast liberal values and you can play any race and whatever, right? So, okay. I mean, if you don't like that, you don't have to buy the game. In fact, I've heard of this really good alternative medieval authentic game based on authentic medieval folklore, history, legends, and even the magic system is based on actual medieval grimoires and it happens to be an OSR game, which I think Perilous Land is not. This game is called Lion and Dragon, and you might want to pick it up, right? Like it's a pretty good game.
Pendragon is also good, and Dragon Warriors is also good.
Pendragon, I can't say anything bad against Pendragon. Yeah. I'll note, as far as Black people involved in Arthurian legend, there literally was a guy who was dark-skinned in Arthurian legend, Sir Palomides the Saracen, right? And Palomides was a pretty important character in the late Arthurian romance, in the late Arthurian legends. Okay, he's actually crucial to ending the saga of the questing beast, which starts with King Pellinore, and he's a very interesting character because he's Palomides the Saracen is not he's a heathen, he's not a Christian, he's in love with this princess, and she spurns him, and he then gets caught up like Pellinore was before him in seeking out the questing beast. And just like Pellinore, his passions are what make him fail to be able to hunt this beast. It's all a very, deeply symbolic allegory that's really sophisticated that comes out of this medieval myth. And then eventually he reaches this kind of low point in his life, and Palomides converts to Christianity, and then joins the Grail quest, and during the Grail quest finally manages to slay the questing beast, right? So the questing beast is an allegory, and the story of Palomides is very heroic and very interesting. So there is at least one example,
That's it, though. There are these individual examples. There are these exceptions, and if you, I've made this point on my own video on all of this, but if you make everything constantly the same and mixed, and you're taking away the opportunity for people to play these unique characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's Palomides or whether it's it's gone by various names in the Robin Hood myths, but Nazir or Asim or any of the other.
That's a very late addition to the Robin Hood myth, but yes.
Yeah, but it fulfills the same purpose.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not denying the probability that Perilous Land is not really doing that. It's not like dealing in exceptions. Instead, it's just gone and, diversified everything. Well, okay, fine, right? If you don't like that, don't buy it. I'm sure there's some people that will say, okay, that's great, and they'll buy it, right? If you don't like that, like I said, you have alternatives, right? Yes, there's Pendragon, and there's also Lion and Dragon, which is a really great, really great game that everyone should pick up. Any comments, Venture?
I was just about to plug my own thing in the comment section. Let's see. Where did Varg do his commenting? Was it on Twitter or
mostly saw it on Twitter? I don't frequent his website or anything, but
I didn't know much about it. I vaguely heard something about it because we talked about topics like a couple days ago, but so some of this was totally new to me. I don't know. My preference in games isn't really towards the authentic or the accurate or the historical, as anyone who knows me.
Understatement of the year right there.
Yeah. But mine is very much the science fantasy and the gonzo and the Lovecraftian. So that's not the kind of game that I would rush right out and buy anyway. But I don't know. It's all fantasy. It's all role-playing game stuff. So I don't care what people put in it. A lot of content is not geared for me. I'm sure it has some audience, however limited. So...
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, he has a right to criticize, I guess, because, I mean, he doesn't live in the United States, but I still consider it a free country or world.
He doesn't live in England either, so he's got no right to comment on our mythology. Except
he has the right
Northeast.
to say whatever he wants, and the rest of us have the right to tell him to go fuck himself.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, and everybody else is, and then if you did create more of a buzz for this game, then that's kind of a backfire on him.
From what I've read, the game isn't preachy. It's really just the art direction, saying, "Hey, you can play whatever you want," and that's an acceptable way to go about it. You know, it's not really telling you how to play your game. From what I've read, I haven't read the whole thing.
I mean, in Lion and Dragon, you could theoretically play what you wanted. There could be an African in 15th century England, or a Saracen for sure, or whatever, anything that is plausible in the pre-Columbian world. You could theoretically play it there. In fact, there is a Moor that appears as an NPC in one of the Lion and Dragon adventures in RPG Pundit Presents. So that's entirely plausible. And like you said, Grimmett, it's I think it's a lot more interesting to have a setting where that difference, if you're playing a character with that difference, or there's an NPC that has some kind of difference from the relative homogeneity of medieval culture, that's something that stands out and brings with it certain potential downsides and certain potential benefits, and to play all that out rather than to create this kind of nicey world where none of those things are a problem, and therefore it doesn't really matter what you are.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going for that authentic touch, then it just seems peculiar to override, these kind of things. That were, being different was integral to a lot of these myths. And just someone from the next village was an alien to a lot of people. It's it's a strange way to go about things. Venger's going to have to hop it soon, so...
Oh, yeah. 2 more minutes.
Do we want to move on to the last topic, or do we just want to let you shill and run away?
Sure. No, we can talk about Evil Hat and...
Yeah.
So Evil Hat had recently had some controversy where they designed a game that was supposed to be a Terminator game, and then they found out they couldn't afford the license. They changed it to a Cthulhu game. Except it's still very much really just a Terminator game, where you're coming back from a terrible apocalyptic future to try to stop not the Terminators, but Cthulhu from destroying the world or something like that, right? And then they covered this up with an enormous amount of virtue signaling. If you want the more of the details about that in particular, I did an entire video about that on my YouTube channel, so go check that out. But most recently, they decided to continue doubling down, because one of the things that they had, of course, because it wasn't a Cthulhu game, it was a Terminator game, they didn't have any sanity rules, which is, pretty much a standard in any Cthulhu game, right? You might not have the same sanity rules as Call of Cthulhu, but you have some kind of sanity rules. And these guys said, no, we don't have that, because role-playing someone with a mental illness is ableist. Right, and it's just wrong, and it's discriminatory, and it's bigoted. So we're not going to let people do that. Right, it's just not right. And so they've said this, and eventually on Twitter, a couple of people who are actually working in the mental health field, as well as some people that are themselves suffering from different kinds of mental illness, have commented on that, saying, "Well, I don't really agree with that." And Evil Hat proceeded to attack those people. I think, given that, Venger, I believe you made a whole video about this, because it does kind of reach some personal level with you. Maybe you want to continue with the explanation.
Of, like, Lovecraft, Cthulhu stuff?
Sorry, Grim Jim I meant. I'm sorry, Grim Jim.
No, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't recall that.
Yeah, we look so similar. It's, yeah, I mean... I have mental illness, and I would much rather have the opportunity to talk about it and explore it in games than to not have that opportunity. I do think, on a professional level, on a game mechanics level, and on a sort of role playing level, I do think there is a problem that isn't handled particularly well with horror and madness and so on, and a loss of player agency, and random tables for madness don't necessarily make a great deal of sense to me. If you go mad because you see Cthulhu, it would make more sense to gain a a phobia of cephalopods or a fear of the sea or something like that, rather than suddenly becoming a transsexual or whatever the result on the random table is. So that's part of it. But the idea that you should remove the possibility of exploring these topics, and it doesn't bother me if anyone just role plays their madness as being pants on head retarded with pencils up their nose. Why should it bother me? It doesn't hurt me.
You wouldn't play the X card on them or anything like that.
No. I might give them a look and say, come on now. So, but that would be the extent of it, I think. And to watch them just lay into mental health professionals who are saying, look, this is a safe environment in which we can explore these things. It can be therapeutic. Not that I think the game table should be something, that we do for therapy. You're there to play and have fun, but they're saying that this is a controlled environment where you can encounter these things, deal with them, and discuss them, and that's healthy and good, and can help someone towards recovery. And for them to just throw that back in their face is just, at some point, you have to listen to experts. At some point on any topic, your opinion runs out and your knowledge runs out, and you have to listen to experts. And if they're telling you the opposite, what's the problem? That I find that far more concerning than a table that makes you randomly believe you're a gibbon or something. It just doesn't matter.
What do you think, Benjer?
Yeah, I mean, going back to early days of Call of Cthulhu, you had sanity mechanics, and you had mental illnesses and phobias and things like that. I think you were encouraged to create some of your own or just kind of pick randomly. I remember just reading the rule book back when I had oodles of time to do that. And, I'd go through the list and I'd think of different possibilities. And then when we would play, maybe I'd throw out, one either as a running the game or as a player. And if my character that I was playing encountered something like that, I would do my best to, role play their madness or degenerating sanity to the best of my ability. And I just kind of thought that was a cool aspect of the game. And, I just wanted to do it justice because there are very few role-playing opportunities besides, getting excited about killing something or having a dialogue and trying to negotiate, I don't know, passage over the bridge or, something like that. Like to explore the idea that your mental health is deteriorating, or that you've crossed that threshold and now you see things from a completely different perspective. You have a new paradigm and maybe you're aligned with the old ones now. And perhaps you're, totally insane and a cultist, or you're going in that direction. And that's just an interesting thing to role play. And I think an intrinsic part of the game, the longer you play, and I think to get rid of that is just A, it's a shame, and B, it's just stupid and unnecessary. So, but I think the whole Evil Hat and Lovecraft thing that they brought up is stupid. And going back full circle to our original topic, obviously if Lovecraft were alive today, his stuff would be pulled down. And, he would be canceled from, I don't know, the internet, or at least social media and drive-through RPG. And now over half of gaming culture, celebrates H.P. Lovecraft and his Cthulhu mythos. So, I mean, is that just because he's dead, or just because everybody loves Cthulhu?
But
I don't know, but that's
a little different.
A line that, and who knows, 10 years from now, if we, I talk about things in terms of the United States. I don't know if the rest of the world would follow suit or counter this, but like, let's say something horrible happens, and I don't know, Bernie Sanders or someone else on the radical left becomes president of the United States, and things make a radical shift to the far left. Maybe anyone associating their content with Lovecraft or the Cthulhu mythos suddenly finds themselves on the banned list. Because, you take a twisted mind, and it doesn't take them too far to make the logical leap that, well, if you like Lovecraft, and if your content is similar enough to Lovecraft or the Cthulhu mythos, and he was a racist, then obviously by association, you are also a racist, and so you don't deserve to be on here either. And that seems like a stretch right now, but 10 years from now, who knows, if things get bad out there, I don't know. We may all be like lining up to the guillotine. I don't know.
Well, I think SJWs will have a lot less influence even in 5 years from now than they do right now.
I do too, but I'm just you're playing devil's advocate, I guess.
But as for Lovecraft, though, he was a product of his age. He was a weirdo even in his own time, right? But his weirdness was probably reflective of the times in which he lived. I think if he'd lived today, he might have been a weirdo in a completely different way, right? Like he might not have been a virulent racist. He might have been something else. It's a bit different when you go back in history, right? Then you can't judge anyone in history by modern standards. You can judge them by their own time. And like I said, Lovecraft was a freak even in his own time. But today, I think he for all we know, he might have been like a radical SJW. Who knows, right? People that have mental trauma will have that mental trauma reflect in some way relevant to the context of the zeitgeist of their age, right?
That's true. And I think we should account for people can change. If Bob Bloodsaw II had written these things 10 years ago and had turned a different leaf, or whatever the phrase is, and was apologetic now and had different beliefs and was sorry about that stuff, I think that'd be a different story. And I would hope that even if Lovecraft were alive today, if he had written certain poems or short stories, in high school or as a college student, and then in his 30s felt differently, as I believe he did, I would hope that society would be lenient and give him a chance and not, throw the book at him and try to put him in a gulag just because as a precocious youth, he had some oddball ideas that rubbed people the wrong way. Anyway, I do have to be going. Good show, guys. And
all right.
I hope everybody in the audience enjoyed this. So support our Patreon.
Good luck. Well, let me add to what we've commented so far that I also saw, Grim, the comments by some of these therapists saying that role-playing can be a safe therapeutic space and stuff like that. And generally, I agree with you that I really don't think that's what regular RPGs are for. Maybe role-playing exercises in the context of therapy is, that might be a totally different thing. I don't know. But, an RPG isn't supposed to be a place to work out your mental issues necessarily, right? But that's still a lot less stupid than this insistence that is ever growing among the SJWs that says you're a bigot if you play anything other than yourself, right? Because how, and yourself had better be a modern 2020 hard left intersectionalist who hates Trump, right? Otherwise, even playing yourself is bad, right?
They're missing out on a lot by doing that, though. I've had a great time playing villains, plenty of times.
But they're missing out on in terms of setting design, in terms of everything, that they homogenize everything, right? Everything has to be 2020 Seattle, right, for these people. And it's having a harmful effect on the hobby in that, to some degree, this has been taken up by Wizards of the Coast, right?
Yeah, I did see the Zine Quest guy and a couple of other people saying that you shouldn't have characters who are crippled or have lost limbs, things like that in your games. That seemed to be a bit too far for some of the people who were saying you shouldn't tackle mental health issues there. But in some games and settings, it's kind of integral that you can lose a limb or be blinded by a stray crossbow bolt, that sort of thing. In say Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, that's fairly likely.
Lion and Dragon is one of those games, by the way. There's a critical table in Lion and Dragon that can lead to loss of limbs, and that critical table is expanded into a whole series of critical tables by weapon type in the old school companion, the medieval authentic old school companion, which if you like Lion and Dragon, you should pick up the old school companion. It's doing really well. 266 pages of supplementary material that you can use for Lion and Dragon or for any OSR game. So if you're looking for some very interesting, gritty, and I hate to use the term, but realistic-esque critical tables to use in OSR, they're really good ones. And I've had in my campaign, there's one guy who's playing a knight that lost an entire forearm, right? Had to adjust. So and it's something that is, he's a veteran gamer, right? So he doesn't have a big, someone else might have been really upset about it, but he didn't have a big problem with it. He saw it as an opportunity to make his character more interesting, and that's exactly what happened. So, this is the thing, right? I saw some of them were saying, well, you can have characters that have disabilities, but you can't have them have any penalties, right? Well, then what the hell is the point, right? Like, why would you do that when then you get rid of all the role-playing potential of that sort of situation, of having to adapt to a different set of circumstances, to disadvantages that you can then overcome. Like, that's the whole goddamn point.
We did have an incident. We were playing a fantasy game, but using my blood horror rules. And in the very first combat the characters got into, one character who was a captain of the guard, first attack against him, a goblin, scores a critical, gouges out his left eye. Next attack, goblin, scores a critical, gouges out his right eye. So we did retcon that, so he only lost the one eye. But that was just terrible misfortune.
Well, that's either really bad luck on the table, or that table has too many eye gouge results.
It was very, very bad
eye
luck.
gouge should be pretty rare.
Yeah, it was. Well, a critical is roughly 5% chance, I think, in most systems. I think it is in blood, and then it was a 1% chance of hitting him in each eye. So it just goes to show how bad luck can go sometimes.
Yeah. Well, once again, this is another case of, like, I mentioned this in my video on the Evil Hat subject on my YouTube channel, that the reaction that Evil Hat got, the amount of people who stood up and said, "You guys are asshats," has been quite notable. And I think that even 2 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that. 2 years ago, it would have been people like you and me who would have said something critical, and then all the SJWs would have dogpiled, and then a whole bunch of people, I don't know if they do this to you, but they do this to me all the time, or they used to, because nowadays there's more people actually speaking up. But it used to be that every time I spoke up against some stupid leftist nonsense in the RPG hobby, that I would get a bunch of private messages and DMs and emails and stuff like that from some people who know me, and some people who are professionals in the industry, and then just some regular gamers who would all be saying, "Yeah, I totally agree with you. I just I can't say that in public," right? and now you're getting to the point, which is again to me a very hopeful sign that these guys are losing their power to instill fear.
Yeah,
that a ton of people told Evil Hat to go screw themselves.
We probably got different people talking to us in DMs, but yeah, I did definitely get that. The people who were talking to me tended to be the more artsy, creative types, and the old school leftists like myself, saying, I agree with what you're saying, but Jesus Christ, you rein it in a bit, or you'll never work again. That sort of thing.
Oh, mine never give me that warning. They know that would be futile. Also, every time I've stood up to these guys, I've ended up becoming better known and selling better. My last month, I mentioned this also in I think it was in that same video, because there were some people that were attacking me for my comments about Evil Hat or whatever. But every time that people call for me to be blacklisted or whatever, I end up selling better. And last month was my most profitable month, I think, ever in RPG business.
Congratulations. So, well done.
Yeah. And this shows every sign of continuing, right? So it's like I've been steadily gaining ground. My YouTube, which they said, oh, nobody, that's going to fail. Now it's getting close to 2,000 subscribers as well. It's still a bit of ways, but it's growing very steadily and heading in that direction. My videos all get over 1,000 views, and
I don't think
all the Pundit Presents products are selling like crazy. So they have this illusion that they can hurt you, but they for the most part they can't if you're not doing anything actually really condemnable, right?
Yeah, I don't think I've gained quite as much as you have from these battles, because I am left wing. So a lot of people hear that I'm some kind of right wing conservative, whatever.
Judging by the comments tonight, I think most of the people in the chat would not share your political views.
Probably not, and that's fine. See?
But it's nice that you guys come out here to listen to him anyway, right?
But a lot of people come over to my stuff, my social media and so on, and then realize, oh, he's not. And then they leave again. So yeah, it hasn't been quite as successful for me fighting with people.
I still have hopes for you, Venger, that someday, I'm Grim, Venger. Sorry, Grim. Second time I've done that tonight, but I was going to mention Venger, and that's why, right? That I hope that, like Venger, at some point, Venger didn't want to do it either. Venger was a Hillary voter. I love reminding people of that. But at some point, he had that red pill shoved right up his ass, and it was painful for him, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. But at the end of it, he felt so much better. He had been purged of the poison that was within him, and now he's a lot happier for it.
I think there's a lot less.
Happen to you.
I think there's a lot less distance between the US left and right than there is the British left and right. But yeah.
Well, especially nowadays, yeah. I mean, given that you're left with Corbyn, and people that like Hamas, So I mean, I guess the Democrats do have Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, so they have people that like Hamas too.
Dave Patet just called me a mercurial cove. I like that turn of phrase. I prefer that I'm a man of nuance in a time of black and white thinking. I think that's more accurate. But mercurial cove is a wonderful turn of phrase.
George Whittlesbach, Lorraine McLaren Hoopy said, "Don't worry, Jim, you might be a leftist degenerate, but he claims you still write better Goetia rules than anything I can muster." But he's only saying that because he's mad that the cat boy is still alive. So don't get too high on that. If you guys check out the Old School Companion, you're going to find a ton of magic rules, all based on authentic medieval grimoires that are really interesting stuff that you can plug right into your OSR game, whether or not you play Lion and Dragon. And it's all based on, actual medieval magic, the way medieval people thought magic worked.
Yeah. Did you go with John Dee, or did you go with Bremelin?
John Dee is a little bit late for the period, right? So what I did is the earlier grimoires. There's stuff like, the stuff from the 5 Books of Solomon and from
and the stuff that's derivative from that, yeah.
The Picatrix and the Ars Paulina and a bunch of other stuff like that. The earlier.
eventually I'm going to get around to doing my 1600s game, and I've been doing some research on witches grimoires and stuff. Then the trouble is, most of them were made up by the church, so I've got to make a decision whether I include that or whether I go to the older folk magic or whether I do both. Or
Well, I have a supplement. It's not in the old school companion because it's a later issue of RPG Pundit Presents called Medieval Folk Magic, where I have a list of 20 actual folk magic rituals that dated to the, roughly to the medieval period. Some of them were early Renaissance and stuff like that. But it's really hilarious stuff, right? Because the magic is so out there, right? It's nothing like the kind of high magic of the, that people that went to Cambridge were doing. It's totally peasant magic.
Yeah, I think I'm going to tend more towards the sort of post-Cromwellian but still fairly puritanical outlook. So most magic will probably be the Church of the Times view on magic. So, satanic orgies and shape-shifting and that sort of thing.
Remember that at the same time that Cromwell was around, if by that you mean Oliver Cromwell.
Yeah.
You still had that was the time where you had Elias Ashmole, who was reprinting John Dee's stuff, and you had the Rosicrucians, and so there was a huge undercurrent of people doing ritual magic alone, and for the first time in a serious sense in kind of groups, one of which eventually became the Freemasons, right?
Yeah.
The Invisible College and all that.
Yeah, a little bit later than Solomon Kane, but this is a ways off, so don't get too excited, people.
Yeah. Well, I've got some RPG Pundit Presents issues coming up with some more magic. There's a lot of them now that you can get either in the old school companion or in the later issues. Stuff like medieval dream magic. That's one that hasn't come out yet. But tree magic, medieval enchantments and glamour and stuff like that. The two that haven't come out yet that I've already done are medieval dream magic and rune magic. So those will probably be popular choices.
I was reading something today about Iceland has made worship of the older sort of Norse gods and something sort of official and sanctioned. And they're building that fantastic pagan temple, which just looks gorgeous when they have the Northern Lights going over it.
Now since like the 70s.
There was something more recent.
But you know that a lot of it is really kind of like theoretical reconstruction, right?
Yeah. Slightly less twee and Victorian than Druidism, but
no, way less.
Yeah.
I mean, the Druids just like the Druidic order and stuff. That's just nonsense, right? Like these guys start trying to look at the original sources of Norse paganism and make it into something that is similar. How similar is very debatable, but at least they're trying,
And at least we have some runic records and things. So yeah, that's something. It's just a shame it's become so safe.
In Iceland, Norse magic kept being practiced right through all the Christian period. Right? Like there was still people doing Icelandic bind runes and into the 18th and 19th centuries. Right? These are things that never went away. It's just they stopped praying to those gods, but they were still doing all the magic and folklore of it.
Dracopol, you're asking me to shill new releases. Unfortunately, I've been in a bit of a depressive fug for the first half of this year, so I haven't got a lot done. But I did just get a new print run of Election Party, so you can order that. The Election Party site has had to be taken down. It's nothing dramatic, but I have to wait for someone else to say something before I can talk about that. But you can go and order them on the Post-Mort site, post-mort.com now. And I hope to have some more stuff out soon.
All right. I've been doing a lot of plugging tonight already, but in case it wasn't enough, if any of you aren't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Dracopol just asked about the sci-fi issue. RPG Pundit Presents number 100 is going to be the next RPG Pundit Presents that's coming out. Now, the publisher has had some delays because we're trying to make it special. And I think it'll probably be out. I hope it'll be out in no more than 1 month. So there might still be a bit of a wait, but it's going to be really good. It might even have a print version. Let us know if that's something that you would want. It's basically a space opera type OSR game that reworks the Lion and Dragon rule concept, like the way that the Lion and Dragon handles the OSR rules, but makes it into a game for, space opera along the lines of stuff like Star Wars and that sort of stuff, right? Like it's not hard sci-fi, but it should be pretty good, and it will be coming out.
Cool. I think we'll just about call that a wrap then. I'll just note that once the show's done, so probably tomorrow, once it's finished processing and everything, it will be up on Anchor FM. If you go to anchor.fm/inappropriate characters, all one word, you should find all the past episodes I was able to turn into usable audio up there, and the show will be up on those on the various podcasting platforms. They're all listed on that page, but you should be able to find us on like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, places like that. So if you miss a show or you just want to listen on the go or whatever, you'll have the option.
So I'm guessing you want to go to sleep, Grim. So I guess our debate on the BBC and whether it needs to be defunded or completely burned down, we'll just have to continue on Twitter.
Yeah. I'll see you for that tomorrow. Though I need to get on with some.
Very well. We shall continue there, sir. Yeah. Pistols at dawn.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Currently smoking Lorenzetti Horn plus Image Virginia.
Cool. Currently not taking anything except painkillers. Take care.
I'm the bad guy?